call the meeting to order at 6:04. Call the meeting to order, and we have some Pledge of Allegiance people. Come on down, you're the next contestant on The Price is Right.
All right, I think Mrs. Caffell would like to say a few words about the kids.
I brought with me today from the Bakey School 3 of our 5th graders. We have Kellen McNulty, Zachary Ingersoll, and Madison Doyle. All 3 of them were very engaged with the recent Artist in Residence project that we had going on, which was creating the murals, and there's an example on the screen. They created 4 murals with our Artist in Residence, and all of our classes from kindergarten through 5th grade were involved in putting these murals together. I'm very proud of the work that these students did. They did this in about a week's time with the help of our Artist in Residence. We are going to be unveiling officially these murals at school on Thursday, January 2nd at 2:15. Our artist is coming back as part of the reveal, and then they will be installed in the Bakey building. So we're very excited for that. Marianne Komarzak, who was our enrichment teacher, was also very involved in the project. And in reflecting on it, she said she found particularly interesting about celebrating our 325th anniversary birthday here in Kingston through art is that it brought about many conversations in the art room about why some of the images were selected. The students learned that Kingston was known as the carriage town because many carriages were built in Kingston, and it brought a greater understanding of why our town has a newspaper named the Carriage Town News, and why there's a shopping plaza with the same name. Students also learned that Kingston was a chicken farming town, and the project gave time to reflect on the beauty and unique qualities of many of our historic buildings within the town, as well as the town hall itself. So, 3 students were very proud as they represent the work that our whole school did.
Great.
They're going to lead us in the pledge.
Would you guys like to come down and lead us in the pledge? You can come right up here.
We won't bite, really.
All right.
He'll back up, so
Yeah.
you'll be
The
safe.
flag's right here, so whenever you're ready, just go ahead and start.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, 1 second.
Kellen,
We have 2
Thank you,
plugins
Kellen.
for the computer.
Zachary,
Just 1.
and Madison. Thank you so much. It was great to see you all this
You
evening.
sure?
Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I was gonna do the minutes and then the non-public.
Perfect. Thank you.
Move to approve the minutes. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And now that everybody is seated and relaxed, I will tell you, we're going into non-public, so you're going to have to leave. Because the things we're going to be discussing in
Leave them
non-public,
right here.
we are then going to be talking about in public. But until we do the non-public, we can't talk to you about it. So how long about?
Oh, 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, okay. So if you give us 10, 15 minutes, that'll be good. As it turns out, what we thought we were going to talk about after the meeting, we can't talk about because it has to do with negotiations. So sorry about that I said we would talk about it because we're not talking about it. But we will talk about it at a future date.
I will do that.
That's for sure, I'm sure. Okay, so now we've got the superintendent's report. Phyllis, Matt took the minutes, but do we have to tell you it was voice vote to go in and voice vote to come out? Or Matt just puts that with his? Okay. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to take a moment to remind everyone that this Friday, 12/20, is an early release day. Enjoy that very much, I'm sure.
I bet it doesn't snow.
Live for those days.
Thanks, Ellie. I also wanted to tell the community that Monday, January 13th of 2020, amazing to say 2020, when I think about Back to the Future in the 80s and, you know, at 6:30 p.m. on Monday, January 13th, 2020 at the Sanborn Regional High School, we will be hosting the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and they will be doing a presentation on social media called The Predator's Playground. People who attend will learn about the dangers that face teens every day. In doing so, we'll discuss how computers, cell phones, iPads, digital cameras, gaming systems, social networking applications, and internet blogs all play a role in placing families and students at risk. The 1.5-hour presentation is specifically geared toward parents, educators, and community leaders who are looking to better understand the technology available to teens today and the way in which child predators use those technologies to exploit children. So I really hope that everyone on the board will be there. I hope that folks in our community will come out. This is an important topic that really needs to be addressed. And that concludes my superintendent's report for this evening.
Okay, committee reports. Policy, you have something?
Our next meeting is January 8th at 4:45 PM in room 102. We'll begin updates to section K of the policy manual, and everyone's welcome to attend.
Okay, facilities?
At the last school board meeting, early in the meeting, I said the facilities report would be given tonight, but it was actually given later in that meeting. And it was about the selection of an architect for the district. And anybody that's interested in that detail can refer to the minutes of that meeting or the video. The next facilities meeting is January 8th. That's at 3:45 PM in room 102.
How about your finance?
And finance, we met this afternoon. I will give the finance report next week, or at the next school board meeting in January. The next finance meeting is January 22nd at 3:45 PM.
Public relations?
Yep, Public Relations met on December 11th. In attendance, myself, Mrs. Alessio, and Dr. Haynes. I was nominated, I will continue as chair of that committee. The committee's goal is to ensure that information is disseminated to the public. The district has a number of systems in place for communicating with the school community, but would like the committee's assistance with the larger community. The committee would like to facilitate the submission of informative articles in local media to support the board's initiatives, but feels the need for some direction from the board before doing so, because statute restricts fewer than a quorum of members from speaking on behalf of the board. Mrs. Mahoney will request this topic be placed on an upcoming agenda, which it is on our agenda for later on. Ms. Alessio mentioned that in the past there was a district publicist.
Thank you.
Dr. Haynes wondered if this might create an opportunity for a student through an internship or extended learning opportunity to collaborate with the committee to provide regular communications about the district's ongoing efforts. Mrs. Mahoney believes the committee could also help to support the grade reporting system search. These topics may be discussed at a future date. The next public relations committee meeting is on January 15th at 4:30.
Okay, personnel.
Our December 11th meeting was canceled. Our next meeting is January 15th at 5 PM, and we'll be updating job descriptions at that meeting.
SST?
Yeah, meeting on Monday night. The SST advisory board is working hard to try to figure out how to increase the number of student enrollments because there was a dip this year, which is leading to higher than anticipated tuition rates. More to come on that. We did discuss whether or not adding an electrical, HVAC, or plumbing program would make a big difference, and everyone seems to be in general agreement that those would, but there is a state process for adding those programs, so it takes time. So we may task the new director with adding one of those 3 programs in the near future.
Oh, I'm sorry, seminary. No, nothing in seminary. Budget.
Okay, budget, I'd like to present that on our last meeting, we accepted the superintendent's and the school board's budget unanimously. Our next meeting will be January 14th, which will be a presentation by the Budget Committee to the public. And February 5th at 7 PM here in the auditorium will be the deliberative session with both the school board and the Budget Committee. Snow date will be the 6th.
Now, that will be the public hearing on the 14th?
Yes, it is.
Ellie, what's the difference between a public hearing and a deliberative?
Well, the deliberative is the part one of a two-part voting situation.
And the people speak at the deliberative,
Yes,
but at a hearing, there usually aren't questions, it's just a hearing?
it depends on the chairman of the.
Yes, okay, but I just, so that people know the difference. People sometimes think that, and it's again up to the chairman, but people think that a hearing, they can have dialogue, and a
Well,
lot of
it's-
times they
it's
don't.
Not necessarily dialogue, but the public certainly is welcome to ask questions
Yes,
on different aspects of the budget, absolutely. And if possible, members of the budget committee should be able to give an answer.
I'm trying to
Maybe
kind of
not.
show that, I'm trying to show the difference between the hearing versus the deliberative.
There's no vote, that's about the only difference.
Yeah, right.
Right, the deliberative is where the budget could be modified, but at the hearing, it can't be modified.
No, that's correct.
That's, I guess that's what I was trying to get at. But anyway,
Thank
just so
you.
the people
You're
understand.
absolutely
Not bad for a guy from Maine, huh?
I know what I mean, I just couldn't verbalize it, which is why I called on Ellie. Aaron, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay, what you got?
So just today we had our ugly sweater day that we have every year. It was really good. A lot of people participated.
We had the ugliest.
Oh, that's a good question. There were a couple people in my grade that were matching, so that was really cool, although they weren't necessarily ugly, so it's a tough competition. All the grades have started preparing for their winter carnival, even though it's almost 2 months away. The overall theme is cartoons. Seniors are SpongeBob, juniors are Scooby-Doo, sophomores are Mario, and freshmen are Phineas and Ferb.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's a really good set of themes. We're also right in the middle of our 12 days of caring, where we collect items like winter clothes and pet supplies and everything, and then we donate them to places around the community. So Thursday's tomorrow is the last day for that. So, and then we distribute the items over the weekend. So that's what we're doing.
Great.
Thank you. Mary, you got anything for public comment? What's your name again? Yeah, anything you want to say on public comment? Oh my God, this first time you said hi to me today. Okay. Pam, you're up.
So let me read the motion and then we can discuss. I have several policies for you. I'm gonna offer them as first and second read and see if it flies.
Good try.
I'm gonna take the mandated policies first, since the Director of Student Services, Jody Gutterman, recommends that we approve these as is, since they're mandated and they're highly regulated issues, such as
So
homeless
moved.
students. So let me go ahead and make the motion for the non-controversial ones first. Move that we revise following first and second read policies IHBAA, JFABD, and JLF by adopting the New Hampshire School Board Association's updated sample policies of the same, and that we adopt following first and second read new policies GBEAB and JFABE using the New Hampshire School Board Association's latest sample policies of the same.
Second?
And let me pull those up for you.
We've all been given these, am I correct?
Yes,
And
this
hopefully
is
everyone's read them.
first read, but hopefully we can do a first and second read. I'm skipping over GDB for a moment. We'll go back to that as a second motion. So these policies concern children with learning disabilities, homeless students, reporting child abuse and neglect. And again, they're fairly mandated, regulated policies. By state law, we really can't modify the language. So hopefully we can approve them as is. And I know the reporting of child abuse or neglect is priority, meaning required by law, but that's always causes a lot of discomfort among employees, because we're educators first, we're not therapists, you know what I'm saying? We're not child psychologists. So I'm a teacher, we're designated to report abuse, but it's sometimes difficult to know what you're seeing, especially in high school, whether there's abuse going on. But it is required that if you have any suspicions, that you need to report it. Even if there's no evidence that you can really point to, but you have some kind of inclination or concern that you want to bring to the district. So that's
Who does it get reported to?
on
It's already police, I believe.
to the administration, and then they take it from there. I'm looking at page 17. It says, this is mandated reporting all persons if they have a reason to suspect. The requirement to report is not dependent on whether there is proof of abuse. Any doubt regarding whether to report should be resolved in favor of reporting. So again, this has been a bone of contention among teachers at my campus forever, because we're like, wait a minute, we're teachers. I mean, we're not experts in family and childhood counseling. So, but again, I guess it's something that you need to report if you have any suspicions. And it's per Ed Rule 501.02. And I'm just kind of complaining because it's been an issue for a long time at my district, but it is required. Then GBEAB is mandatory code of conduct reporting on page 20, and we need to designate whether the report that the individual shall report suspected violations to a business administrator or human resources director. So I'm not sure which one we prefer to fill in the blank on that one. I'm showing you right now.
Doesn't say either one.
So if the person was the subject of an alleged misconduct, is the superintendent, then the covered individual shall report the suspected violation to. And so would we like the business administrator or the human resources director?
It says here that the most senior member,
I thought
In
it
the
was one
business.
or the other, so it's up to that
Right.
person to decide. I don't know if we need to editorialize these, we've all read them.
Right now, okay. And then on page 21, we have to choose either paragraph 1 or 2. And I prefer 1 because it states that you may report orally, but then you must provide a written report following up the oral report. And the second paragraph says you're encouraged to make the report in writing. I always prefer things in writing, so that's why I like paragraph 1. Does anybody have a preference on either one of those?
Well, if it's urgent, one would be better because you can report it orally and follow
Right.
up with a written report.
Exactly, that's what I'm thinking, so.
I certainly trust Jody Gutterman, and she asked that we adopt these policies.
yeah,
She is all over it. And so I would agree with Pam on this one, that moving this a little quicker
Sure.
provides
So
more
do you
safety for the
prefer
district.
paragraph 1, does that seem suitable?
I prefer paragraph one. I
Okay,
also have
so
issues with
let's go
some of the
ahead
other
with
ones.
the first paragraph.
I'm good with that too.
So, can we have a vote?
No,
So as
gonna say,
amended?
I've got
you-
issues. I want
Okay. All in favor of paragraph 1?
paragraph one, I'm in favor of.
That'll be part of the motion. so.
And can I get a vote to approve as amended?
So moved.
David?
All in favor?
No, it depends on what we're voting on. If we're voting on approving all of these, then no, I'm not in favor. We haven't talked about it yet.
It
Okay, so
was
you have
for
concerns.
the
you wanna-
amendment,
Yes.
which is to choose paragraph 1 here, which
Okay, but
we do support.
I'm confused here.
Okay, Jamie wants to talk about some of these.
That-
Oh, all
yeah,
right,
that-
no
that's-
problem.
That's what I.
But you
yeah.
had you moved two specific policies, I
Okay,
thought.
can we-
You made a motion to move for first and second read. I didn't think they
Right.
were all of them. Was it the whole
Yeah,
slate
but
or
we can
just
discuss them.
specific ones?
Oh, okay,
Whoa,
so,
whoa, folks.
go
Thank
ahead,
you.
Jamie.
Thank you very much. We have a motion. We're now doing discussion. Jamie, you want to discuss something?
Yes. So, starting with JFABD,
On page,
section B, page 10, going into the top of page 11. It talks about enrollment and school stability. This is dealing with homeless children. And it says that they will be admitted immediately, which is before immunization. And I would say they should be immunized before they are admitted. That also occurs in another section on another group where we talk about students being immediately entered in the school before immunization, the page 15, section C, second paragraph of section C, again says that they be placed immediately, and I would say they should be placed after immunization, not immediately. Just as every other student is required to have immunization requirements.
So what, if I, you finished, I'm sorry, I just want
On
to.
those two,
Okay.
then I've got
So-
more issues.
Okay, so just speaking to those, am I hearing you say that we will not allow children into the school district unless they've been immunized?
Correct.
So, in other words, I happen to be a fundamentalist and I'm not gonna have my children immunized. Are you now saying my children are not gonna go to that school?
Yeah, that's what you say to me.
Well, you're gonna wanna have one hell of a lawsuit and you will lose.
Well, then I'll sue you now, because you say it to me.
I think we're
As a
setting the
resident
school-
of the town, I have to have
I think we're setting the
immunizations.
school district up for one hell of a problem down the road.
I disagree.
Yeah. Well, I tell you right now, as a fundamentalist, I'm not, but if I were a fundamentalist, and certainly we've all read the newspapers, you know my first comment, as soon as I bring my child, behind my child's gonna be my lawyer,
Yeah.
waiting for you to say no, right? And then I will say to you, fine, you are now paying one-on-one tutor at home at thousands and thousands of dollars. And you will lose in court, because this is my constitutional right of freedom of religion. And you know there've been case upon case upon case. I've never heard of a win for the school district when they wouldn't let a child in who has not been immunized.
It says they're gonna get immunized
As a
also.
science teacher, I agree with putting children at risk, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. But I also know that given what's going on in the world today, you don't let my child go to that school because of my religious beliefs, and you got major problems. You people can vote the way you want, folks, that's okay.
Well, is there a state statute about this?
About immunization?
Yeah.
I
About
do-
what's required to enter a school, to be enrolled.
I do not know, okay, I'll
That's,
get you a second.
that should be the governing,
Right.
Aren't
Wait,
these,
Tammy, let Jim finish here.
I'm done.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Tammy, what you
so
got?
these policies that we're discussing though are specific, aren't they, to homeless students and students in foster care? Are they not?
They are.
I mean, we're not discussing a policy, we don't have a policy on the table that applies to all
Well, I
of the
think
students
he's
in the
talking about
district.
not voting for it because,
I'm
okay,
just saying that
We're having discussion now. That's the
isn't
discussion.
really
I-
relevant to these policies
I'm saying for these
specifically.
policies, I would put that in. Right now, it says that we will do it after. I'm saying we should do it before.
Is that, like, my understanding of when I read these was that it appeared that the intent was that homeless students and students in foster care are to be enrolled immediately upon sort of presentation to the district, regardless of, is that,
yes, but
Is
the
that
part he's
correct?
reading about in that policy is that whether or not they're immunized or
I'm just,
not. and we
do
allow
we
it in.
have that latitude
Don't we
legally?
have
Does
other
statute allow us to even change that
Well,
language?
okay, so I'll tell you my opinion on this, because I would not advise you as a school board to change any of these policies. They were written by a lawyer who specializes in policy development and takes into account all of the laws that are applicable. If you adopt them and we want to examine whether or not we could add that, we can always add it back to the agenda, get another opinion, and come back and talk about it. The intent of the law, of the policy, is this. If a kid ends up being homeless and they need to go to school, we can't create a roadblock for them. And sometimes homeless kids are really, really difficult to get records. Medical records, residency records, all kinds of things. It's a really gray, murky mess, and it can become incredibly litigious. But I will say that I hear Jamie's concern, and I'm not giving my opinion on that particular item one way or the other. I'm happy to do some homework on that and find out, but I'm cautioning you as a board to either pause on that policy and save it for later and come back to it, or adopt it as written by the NHSBA, who are experts in this area, and then have me do the research to find out the answer to that question, and then we can amend the policy later. But I think it's just important to note that Jody, this is a big part of Jody's job, and she's saying that these policies protect the district, and that's the gist.
Are all students required to have immunization before they come to school? Not homeless children, all children.
That's my understanding.
So how can we make exception for homeless?
Because homeless changes everything. There are so many specific laws and rules for homeless kids because of the precarious circumstances that they're in, that they don't even have to prove residency if they're homeless. It is very
Well,
complicated.
they have no residence if they're homeless.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but I'm not gonna go on a tangent here. I'm just gonna say it's not as clear as that sounded.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, it's
Yeah.
not. Then I would rather, in deference to my colleague to my left, suspend a vote on this particular one. I'd rather have no policy than have one that we're not happy with.
So Matt just pulled up ED 311.01 school immunization program. And it says, A parent or legal guardian shall have a child immunized against certain diseases as determined in rules, immunization requirements adopted by the Commissioner of the Department of Health and Human Services. A child shall be exempt from immunization in accordance with RSA 141-C, semicolon 20-C. A child who is exempt from immunization in accordance with letter B shall not attend school during an outbreak of a communicable disease for which immunization is required. A child is not immunized. If a child is not immunized, as in Ed 311.01A, does not have a religious or medical exemption, or is unable to provide evidence of acceptable immunization for conditional enrollment, he or she shall not be admitted to the school.
So there is law.
Oh, there is. So legally, we require everybody else to do it, so.
We can table this and bring it back in January 8th. There really aren't many school days between now and then, and I can email Will and ask him. It's fine.
I would like to get
I think
clarification.
Then let's do that.
Sure.
I got a couple more if I could continue on.
Sure.
GBEAB. In it, we are referencing, in this document, we're referencing two other documents, one of which we say, as a note to ourselves, we don't have this. So I don't know how it's going to service. This is on page 20, where we say, by way of district policy GBEB, which we are noting from the policy committee that's not in our manual, but we're going to adopt the policy that references the policy that's not in our manual.
There we
Well,
go.
hold on. Let's bring that back up. Let's slow this down a little bit. So number one, if you read this carefully, it says and or district policy GBEB. That should come out if we adopt this policy, because we don't have GBEB. What this is really doing is it's saying that we have to follow the code of conduct that's been adopted by the state of New Hampshire in law.
Yep.
So I think it's important to remember when you read these to look at what needs to happen. Like, we do have a board policy JICK.
Yep.
Our needs updating, but it's not unusable.
But so from this policy perspective, then we should scrap that reference to GBEB
Exactly,
if we
yeah, and
don't
then you
have
go
it.
down to the bottom where I just want to help with this for a second, Jamie. Go to the bottom, Pam, thank you. I'm waving my hand like I can do something here. If we don't have GBEA, you just don't list it there.
Correct, that's what I'm saying.
List it once we
You-
have
You
it.
can't have the policy
Yes,
referencing another
yes, and I
policy.
just wanted, those are just technical things and I didn't want to slow that down because of those.
Okay.
Going further down, this is talking about misconducts or violations, and it says that if the person who's the subject of the alleged misconduct or violation is the superintendent, then the covered individual shall report the suspension or the violation to the administrator, et cetera, who is hereby granted authority to consult with the district's attorney on the matter. And my point is, as the superintendent is the employee of the school board, should it not also be reported to the school board?
I would say yes.
I would say yes as well.
So would I.
It's fine.
That's really the only employee technically that the school board has. Is
Right.
The school board chair should be
Yeah, I
reported to
think
the school board
I
chair.
always thought it did
That's
say
fine,
school
too.
board
I
chair.
thought it did too.
Okay.
I didn't see it in there.
You're okay, Pam?
So it says, no, it says the violation to the business administrator / human resource director because you have to remember that an okay, let me just slow this down. I don't really care because I'm not worried about it, but I could have an allegation against me.
Yep.
Until there's an investigation of that allegation, it could be damaging if it went to the school board chair. So that what would happen is the HR director or Mr. Angel would take the report and then consult with an attorney before reporting it to the school board chair. So it ultimately would have to go to the school board anyway, right? But I just want to be clear that I would be careful with this, because if it jumps to the school board and it's false, and there's vindication, there could be, I'm not worried about this, but I'm just saying there could be a
Yep.
problem.
No, we're not talking about you.
No, I know.
No,
We
no,
got
no.
enough
I'm
problems.
trying to, yeah, exactly, right, I gotta deal with
We have
you.
enough
I
to
mean,
worry
On the-
about you without that.
Just structurally, if there's, I mean, from a chain of command perspective, if there's a
Yes.
complaint against an employee, then generally speaking, the supervisor of that employee is the one that gets informed of such to be involved in the investigation.
I have no problem with doing it with the school board chair, I just don't know if there's a reason why it's not there, because it's so logical.
It's worth checking. I mean, maybe there is a
Yeah,
reason.
it's so logical, but I think we could adopt it and then research that.
Add that piece, I think we should, yeah.
Yeah. That applies in both section B1.
Matt has a
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
he's
yeah,
right
yeah,
about
I
Say
was
this.
this
gonna
again?
bring that up.
Hold
Go
on,
ahead.
let Matt say this.
Repeat it?
The school board is the appeals process. So if, say for example, there's a claim and the superintendent can appeal to the school board. Well, if the school board is the body that's already been notified and authorized the
If I've already
investigation.
been informed, I'm gonna use me example, if I've already been informed, I might end up having to recuse myself because I have prior knowledge of the situation.
That's always the case all up the chain of command. When Tom gets involved, he is leading the investigation before it comes to him sometimes.
Very rarely. Normally, we have Jody do the investigation, and then it comes to me for appeal, and then it comes to the board.
We are the adjudicators of final, unless they go to the states and what have you.
We should verify why it's not there. It just seems to me that
We actually ran into that situation, where there was an electioneering charge a few years back.
Yep.
The former superintendent, and two board members were signatories on the complaint. So they had to recuse themselves from the hearing about it.
So, Jamie, do you feel that we could adopt this policy and then do that research and come back to it, or do you want to table it? Sounds like we're doing a first read tonight, and people want to kind of do
Yep.
a second
Yeah.
read, and that's okay. Right? If
Yeah,
we
I
wanna
mean,
slow it down a little bit,
I'd be
we'll all
okay
right.
either way, but I think that's tied in with some of these others, so I'd like to get some of the answers.
Great questions.
Yeah, so instead of first and second read tonight, why don't we just amend the motion to make it first read tonight?
Is that fair?
Shoot off your questions, we'll get the answers, and we'll bring them to the next meeting and talk about them.
Okay.
We've got a bunch of other ones too, so
Wanna-
let's
You
do them all
wanna
at
amend
once.
that motion?
So I withdraw my motion for first and second read and have this be a motion for first read, and we will bring it to the board again.
Right.
And
So
send
how-
us questions like we did last time.
How do you feel about that? You made the,
Whatever.
you seconded
accept
it.
that. Yes.
So
I
is
don't
that,
know what the process is, but I'll second.
No, but you're gonna withdraw your
All you
second.
have to do is
that again.
agree,
yeah,
agree with the
so you're
amended
gonna
motion.
withdraw your second also. Okay, now she had the motion, do you second that,
I
her
second.
motion?
Yes, I do.
Okay, you got that all right, Phyllis? I know it's a little confusing, but, but that's the rules, you know that's the rules.
I don't argue with you.
No, but you're looking at me and shaking your head.
Don't say it.
I'm sorry, but you know that's the rule. I believe the person who seconds it also has
Give
to
me
agree.
so many
That's
things
right.
to shake my head
Too
over.
many Robert's rules.
Next,
I am next.
Well, are we moving the motion? Is someone moving the motion?
Well, no, we're, yeah,
changed
all in
it to
favor of
first
that?
yeah,
Okay, thank
Yes.
you.
Aye.
Okay, who's on first?
So I
Okay.
move, we review policy GDB as a first read. I'm not even gonna try second.
Right, we just did that. Okay.
no, we didn't do.
Oh,
no,
that's the
that's-
one that we didn't do.
Oh, okay.
And GDB has been before personnel and policy subcommittees. A lot of discussion, and the changes are minor at this point. At least they're not as significant as the discussion indicated we wanted to have done. There are lots of changes we discussed introducing, but we decided that's a long-term project in policy. So for this policy, this is what the administration has recommended for changes, adding sister-in-law, brother-in-law to the list of relations that warrant bereavement leave. And then the big change is changing the number of vacation time allowed after service and adjusting those numbers. And my understanding is that we're trying to stay competitive with other districts and how they allow for vacation leave. So, and we do have, I think it's below 0% unemployment in New Hampshire, so it is very hard to get good people and retain them. So we'd like to keep our benefits in line with what's being offered in other districts. So these are the changes to the vacation leave. And this is the big change here. The superintendent would like to have the flexibility to vary the amount of vacation time allotted based on situations that might arise. And let me see if there's anything else.
But once the vacation time is varied, that person stays at that level until the policy catches up to them. They don't grow from there. So if
Right.
I have to vary a little bit to hire an employee, they stay locked there. Jim has a question.
Yep.
These revisions of vacation time.
Yep.
This is to be competitive with other districts. Did someone do a survey of other districts? How do we have this information?
Diana Rooney did a good job of working on comparable information, but I think it's really important to note that we're having difficulty hiring people because the policy was not, it was not competitive.
So people have come in for interviews and said,
Yes.
well, can
That
get
was the data that we used primarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what, this covers custodians and what other,
The central office, a bunch of central office employees, custodians, and tech, the tech department.
can you give me a ballpark idea of how much money in tuition reimbursements?
I don't have that at hand, I'm sorry.
Okay.
But these numbers do not apply if you're a school year employee. This is for full year-round employment.
Right.
Jamie?
So when this first came in front of the Personnel Committee, the information that was provided was we need to have something different because we have a year and a half before anybody gets any vacation, and it's very difficult to hire somebody without a year and a half, and I agreed with that statement. The question I asked then was, why do we have to increase everything else? You can address that by just changing that first one. Tonight's the first time I've heard the statement that it's because of competitive situation in the community or in the area. To me, we don't have any information. This was requested, has not been provided yet, as to what is the cost of this. Don't know what that is. If we're going to give away vacation days to all these employees, at what cost on an annualized basis is that? I don't know that answer. So I don't think that we're in a position to be approving something without having the information in front of us. There's all kinds of other aspects of this that were talked about at the same time that are not being asked for in terms of changes, but there's significant benefits that exist in this policy that if we're going to be reviewing the policy should probably be talked about also. But to me, to just wholesale change vacations, we have other negotiations that are coming up. This will be setting a precedence that we're giving away more vacation time. We've given it away to other people and changed their schedules. We'll likely be hearing other people say, geez, we want more vacation time too. You gave it to this other folks. And we haven't even provided any cost information on it. So I do not think that we're ready to be moving forward on this.
Well, we talked about that. And I'll address that because I don't agree with you, but I hear you. We're not competitive. And these are custodians. They're our lowest paid employees. And if we don't become competitive, this is a non-unionized group. There is no negotiations. But if we change certain aspects of this policy, which both you and Mr. Chair Broderick discussed at length and he wants to look at through the policy committee, we are changing their working conditions with no notice. So we have to figure out how to do that well and correctly. And so what we agreed to do is to address the issue, which is that we're having difficulty getting people because our vacation time is set up poorly. And I don't know how it happened that we got this far and you've never heard that being competitive was a problem, because that's the whole problem. So I just want to be clear about that. I don't know how that happened. I know I wasn't at a couple of the meetings that you attended with the HR director, but I'm saying that's the problem. The problem is really the sentence below. I'm asking for that. The rest of it, I'm fine with. But I'm saying that when we have people working here, Pam, can you scroll up?
Oh, sure.
No, up. Sorry, the other way.
The other
Just
up.
no,
The other
down
up.
a little more. Thank you. When you're here on full-time employees were working 1 year before getting a day of vacation time.
Yeah.
That is a problem for
I agree with
recruiting
that.
them.
They also,
And so that's why we changed it down below. If you go down, all we did was make it 6 months was 1 week. We took the same amount of time and just cut it in half. We didn't add vacation time to them. We distributed it more equally across the 5 years. So I just want to be clear for the public, we did not add time. We changed the increments from which it is allocated to people so that after 6 months of employment, they would have an opportunity to have a week of vacation time. Now remember, these folks don't often take a week. They'll often take a day here or there, but to work for a year with nothing was really challenging, and that was what we did. We just redistributed it. I just want to be transparent about that.
and I said up front, I'm okay with the first part,
Yep.
but I don't understand the statement that we're not adding anything. If you look at 9 years above, it says 2 weeks plus 4 days. You look at 9 years below, it says 3 weeks plus 4 days.
Yes, we changed the allocation. So it went to 3 weeks after 11 years before.
Mhm.
We changed it to be sooner. So yeah, I mean, okay,
Right.
fair enough. You could argue that there's lost opportunity there for a year or two.
We don't have the software in our payroll to do comp time, earn time. Because a lot of companies, especially large organizations, you start earning your vacation time almost immediately.
Yeah.
Get 1.25 days per month.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So you might be there 6 months and you probably end up with a week's vacation.
Great idea. We could take a look at that, couldn't we, Matt?
'Cause that would make it an easier way to compute. Then you don't have staff time dealing with computations.
Yeah, and I mean, if the board doesn't feel comfortable, certainly the things that would solve the problems for me as superintendent mostly would be if we had, after 6 months, we have a week, and after 1 year, we have 2 weeks, but then leave the rest the same and give me the language below to have the latitude when I'm hiring to address it, because frankly, we almost lost a really good candidate this summer. And I had to make the executive decision, which was really uncomfortable,
Right.
to do something.
And we had talked about that, and I was okay with those changes.
You're fine, yeah.
But
No,
then
again,
it was the rest of it that I've always had the question of, and one of the questions is, what does that cost?
I was
Fair
wrong, I
question.
think it's 3/4 of a day per month. Not a day and a half.
But it's a small amount, I know it is.
The other thing we talked about at length was that this change would only affect new people coming in, because we could not change the conditions of employment for someone we've already hired. Right? Because to make some of these changes, you're changing horses midstream, you can't do that, because, I came to work for you based on this, and now you're telling me you're changing that?
That
So,
happens all the time in life.
Well, that's a difficulty, because you've got somebody has to work 10 years, they could be there in their 8th year, and they're getting 2 weeks and 4 days, where someone who comes in after 5 years is getting 3 weeks.
what I'm saying is, we had a lot of discussion, and we have to be very careful about changing conditions of employment once the person has said, I will go to work for you. I'm going to work for you, giving these conditions, and now you're changing them. Now, some of them were good changes, and some of them were not so good changes.
So what you're
You know,
saying
and
is
we
It's
taught a
kind of
lot.
like becoming a new cable customer, and you get a better deal than the people that have been there 10 years.
Exactly correct.
But this is a new interpretation. Am I understanding that we're saying that everybody currently employed doesn't get the red? They stay in the black that's crossed out?
Yeah, the feeling was that it was moving forward, but I would recommend, based on what you've just said, that you make a motion to alter the document to say that at 6 months, people get 1 week, and at 1 year, people get 2 weeks. Everything else stays the same, and then add the language below to give me the latitude to make a decision when I'm hiring, and then we'll figure it out later. I think you brought up some really good
And
points.
I'm fine with that, and
Yeah.
I might even support it if I had some of the other data sets, but I don't have them present.
Yeah, you want more data, so we can get that for you.
So I don't mind making that motion. I would make the motion, as Tom has stated, that we go with the 6 months at 1 week, 1 year at 2 weeks. Everything else stays the same, and we add the language at the bottom that gives them the flexibility to make sure that we can hire the people that we need to hire.
And I'll second
And
that.
then we'll look back at some of these questions and get answers and review
Fine, cool.
the next step.
Great.
You got all that, Pam? Yeah, can we clean that up a little?
Well, we don't need a motion for that. That's just something you're gonna do, right? I mean, we're not,
No, he made a motion to alter what's been presented So now the board would vote, so it's gonna be
But-
changed to,
Based on additional
So you wanna
information.
strike everything below 1 year equals 2 weeks?
right,
From this
That's
document?
correct.
right, he just
Correct.
wants to be,
For
6
further-
months, you get a week.
For further review.
Would it be better to give them 3/4 of a vacation day per month, which would?
Peter, you're gonna
Let's not
complicate
go
it
there
now.
and
Oh, no, the reason I say that is if somebody's here for 2 months, they could then take, I'm trying to make it easy
Thanks.
for you.
Thank you.
You know, because I've been here 6 months, I'm entitled to 5 days.
I think it's fine if we did 6 months, 1 week, 1 year, 2 weeks.
Okay,
Give
that's
me the
fine.
language
I'm
down
just try-
below
I'm
and I
trying to
can-
clean it up, make it easy.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
We're gonna work on this some more, and I want you guys to know that this was just to get us through now. The committee had a lot of conversation about more changes.
Okay,
So we need a vote on the amendment.
all those in favor?
You got a
So
second?
that was for first read, are we
Oh,
doing
wait,
first
hang on,
and
no,
second?
You gotta vote on
On
Jamie's
the
amendment
amendment?
first.
Okay,
Yeah, and
All
Jim
in favor?
seconded it,
Jim
I
seconded it.
seconded it, but the amendment included getting more information.
Correct.
yes.
Yeah, the amendment,
Yes.
we're not gonna make the other changes until we
Right.
have more information, so
Okay.
they're off the table.
Yes.
Okay, it's
Yeah,
my fault,
thanks, Jim.
I'm kinda losing control here, but I'm confused, okay? So can we just make,
I
The
won't
motion-
comment on that either.
well, yeah, can we
So
give the motion one
yes,
more time?
So the motion is to amend the policy to change the initial hires to be eligible for 1 week of vacation at 6 months, to be eligible for 2 weeks of vacation at 1 year, to adopt the writing in the paragraph below that gives a superintendent the flexibility to hire people outside of the schedule, and that we would revisit this when further data is available.
Second.
Point of order?
Yep.
Do we need to do this on a first read, though? This is only a first read.
That's when you make the
Typically on a
change to the first read,
But usually we don't do motions and,
well, you make the change to the first read, and
do
then
we
the
need to do that
second
through a
read.
motion is my question.
I believe we can accept that motion, because that's, I think, the point
Yes.
of the first read, is to make those changes, then we all get a copy of the first read and the
Amended.
changes, and then we
Amended.
decide.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
All right.
Okay.
Wait,
Pam,
now
you're
they've
still
gotta
up.
vote on the,
So we
on, did we vote to, are we all set with that being a first read as well? Because that,
Yes.
we just voted on the change. Okay, we're good?
Yep.
All right, we'll bring it back in a couple of weeks, all fixed up for you.
Correct.
Good process, Mr. Fitzpatrick, thank you.
I won't eat any more chocolates.
Can you send those things my wife made my way, cause they were really good.
Sure, there's not many left.
Better
They're not
grab
gonna
it
make it
quick.
there.
I might get a toll on the way through.
Yeah,
The
okay, we're
resolution.
now with that, we're now on
Sure
7-2.
comes back,
Right.
you know.
Okay, okay.
Here, I'll just
What do you want? You want, here, take mine, I'm not gonna drink it, it's not even open yet. I'm not gonna,
No, thanks.
oh, you want some of those, I thought you wanted water.
Pass this stuff.
Okay. All right, next on the
I
agenda,
already had some.
as we know, Pam went to the,
I'm going.
or is going rather, to the School Board Association, and she would like some direction from us concerning some of the resolutions.
Just say no.
So you are up again.
On everything.
So these aren't hot links. And I'm gonna have to go into my emails to find them. Did everybody have a chance to review at least the proposed resolutions? Let me see if I can find them in my emails, sorry.
I make all my comments on these still.
Sure. I'll go for it, baby. I like the way you think.
Shout out the date when you find it, Pam.
So there are several proposed new resolutions.
So this is an email from December 5th.
Sorry.
Those links should be live to the proposed resolutions in the
They're
agenda.
not, I can't click them on my
Okay.
Chromebook, but it's December
That's what I have too,
3rd,
Jim.
December 2nd.
December 5th. Okay.
The first one is from Raymond School Board. And They would like to increase an appropriation from $50 to $100 million to support, funding for an adequate education.
You need to scroll up, there's some above that. I thought.
Those are the continuing resolutions.
Oh, okay,
I'm just hitting the new ones first.
okay, sorry.
So I'll move to approve and then we can discuss. Move to approve that new resolution, number 6.
Second, discussion purposes.
On resolution 1, I would say no, since we're not gonna likely have a building program in our near future. So I would not support diverting $50 million to future building proposals. Quite honestly, I'd rather see the state of New Hampshire give us some money in general to fund the basics of education. So I am opposed to this resolution.
So you're saying, give us, in a sense, a block grant that we can decide where the money gets spent and not have them dictate to us where the money
On
gets spent.
building 8,
Because
correct.
our need may be different than Exeter's need.
Or Raymond's need.
I was opposed to this one also, for basically the same reason, it's just us subsidizing other people's buildings.
And I too, and the same reasons.
Do you want a vote on that?
I agree with
Make
what you
that the
said, and I would
original
vote
document,
no
so I
if
don't
I
get-
were to vote. I
Make that the
understand the
original
school board of directors' alternative language, but I would still vote no
Okay.
on both, so.
So, you want a motion on
All in
that, or just a
favor?
hands up on that? Because, well, here's
All
the
in
thing.
favor of
Here-
supporting it.
Well, hold on one second. I'm gonna suggest, and it's up to you, that we give a thumbs up or thumbs down. And the reason for that, instead of having a solid vote where she has to vote a certain way, I'm gonna trust Pam. Somebody could stand up and make an amendment that will change your thinking.
Right.
That maybe, I'm just making this up, they give $5 million for that and another $45 million to go in a block grant to each school district to let them use the way they want. I know I'm being outlandish, but I wanna be outlandish for a reason. Now, all of a sudden, your vote's gonna change.
Oh, no, it's not.
You're telling me that if the state says we're gonna give you're gonna give $5 million to the Skidmore
Where
Regional
does the
School
state
District
get
to
its
spend the way they
funds?
want?
The state gets its funds from localities, okay? In econ, we don't wanna feed the sparrows through the horses being the bureaucracy.
Maybe I've
okay?
said it
Okay.
wrong.
So I would still vote no,
Peter,
but
let's not
So-
go there.
Okay, then let's forget my analogy. Let's just say something could change, not that it would,
okay.
okay? I don't know if I wanna lock her in
I
to.
don't either. I think we're just voting on the sense of the board, so she knows what the board thinks, and then
The
she'll vote the
language
way she
as
needs to.
presented.
As presented.
There we go, excellent.
work?
Language, yeah, that works.
So for
Yep.
number 6, the Raymond resolution, how many thumbs up?
To support it?
Yes, to support. How many thumbs down?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's right. Down.
Unanimous.
And number 7 is Cook Valley School Board would like to
Adequate education.
have the state fully reimburse the cost of basic transportation in order to provide an adequate education. And they want to have transportation be one of the criteria for providing subsidies to different districts.
School Board Association proposed.
I would tend to vote no on this because we'd be giving the state our money and then begging to get some of it back for transportation purposes. And it seems like it's a wealth transfer from urban to rural school districts is what it is. I prefer to keep money local rather than give it to a state entity, but that's generally my preference.
Yeah, basically have the same comments as before. If transport is not included today with them and they want transport, and we're already paying our own transport, we'll be subsidizing other people's transportation also.
That's pretty much the way it works in Maine.
So I would tend to agree with you, Pam, from that assessment.
I didn't mean
We
to say
take
that
a
out
straw
loud.
vote?
I agree with that.
Others?
Feel like I'm at the Coliseum again.
And adequate education, what does that entail? Inadequate education is, again, is something that's been debated and continues to be
Supreme
debated.
Court can't decide that.
It's rather undefined. So I would tend to vote no on 7 and no on the School Board Association's proposed language as well. How many would give this a thumbs up? And how many would give number 7 a thumbs down?
We can't do that.
Okay, I'm gonna go no for this language. 8 is Monadnock Regional School Board. So if we have a mandate from the state,
They better fund it.
then it should be funded with state dollars and not local dollars.
Correct.
Is what they're saying.
So we don't have unfunded mandates again.
Right.
Still, we still have unfunded mandates.
More.
Those guys, they don't read their own legislation.
And the School Board Association said mandates of the State Board of Education of New Hampshire, if their mandates for special education exceed the federal and special education requirements, then the state of New Hampshire should fund those additional mandates. And the School Board Association writes in their last paragraph that the state board should not propose a rule that exceeds state or federal minimum requirements unless the rule is authorized by statute. So I tend to would vote yes on this one because it's saying that it's really taking away local authority. It's saying if the school board, meaning the State Board of Education, mandates something, but it's not an RSA, then we'd have to comply with it. But if it's an RSA, then we'd expect state funding for it.
And hopefully get it.
So I do support the School Board Association's language, recommended language for number 8. Any comments?
Caesar?
That sounds reasonable.
Caesar, up, thumbs up, or down? Thumbs up.
Here we go.
So we're gonna support that one, and unanimous.
Jesus, God, let's go.
9 is
Oh, my goodness.
the
Manchester.
Manchester School Board. That the New Hampshire School Board Association opposes legislation that has a fiscal impact to local communities without the appropriate state funding.
That's a thumbs up.
So I had to laugh out loud at this one because, again, without where does the state funding come from? From
Us.
localities. So it doesn't fall from as manna from heaven.
But they don't always give it back to us, though, Pam.
Yeah, right.
Give it back.
Yes, I understand that.
Minus their administrative costs.
Right.
Oh, yeah. All that mileage that they get paid for and never take. Told you the filters aren't working so good.
You're not in favor of this one?
Oh,
I just can't do this. I mean, honestly. It's so idiotic. It creates undue fiscal burden on local communities. Well, the state has to gather taxes to pay for it, so it's gonna burden the local communities anyway. I don't understand. I'm just,
One way or another, it gets
Well,
paid for out of our pockets.
exactly.
Right.
Except,
We don't always get it back.
no, what I was gonna say is that the thing that I've noticed working here versus living and working in Maine is that here the money stays local. When you give it to the central, southern Maine subsidizes northern Maine.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
My
And that's
money
what
does
would
not
happen
stay in
here.
my community, and I hate that.
Yeah.
I'm really practicing my pitch to get my wife to move, but I just thought I'd do it publicly.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good thing we're keeping this from her.
Bring her back some, bring her back
She
some
probably
of
doesn't
Jamie's
watch
candy.
these.
Yeah, I'll bring back Amy's candies. Yeah.
okay.
All right, so, yes.
Well, I'm just wondering if we vote yes on this one, it would make it harder to pass such programs because they'd have to also get funding along with the bill.
Right.
So it might make it harder to pass.
Except that it's already on the books that they can't pass anything without funding it. And you know we don't get the funding for everything they pass.
Well, the governor vetoed a whole bunch of stuff that was passed, that they didn't have the money for, so.
Right. So I guess we would support this. I mean, I would support it, but
We have to
what say
support it.
ye?
We're with you.
I'd
Yeah.
support it, but if you wanna whack them, you can whack them.
I was just gonna put a period after local communities. Was any legislation that has a fiscal impact on local
Yeah,
communities,
there you go.
period. That would be my amendment to it, but. And now, page 5, let's see, we've only got 2 left. We don't have to go through the continuing if you do not want to. Number 10 is Oyster
Fine.
River, Nottingham and Dover School Boards. They have a resolution on guns on campuses and whether those should be possessed only by certified police officers. This resolution seems to be a blanket resolution, requiring that all districts agree to this resolution, and I'd prefer more discretion in terms of what school boards do, each district does. So, and it says presents a danger. Again, that's debatable, whether guns present a danger if they're used responsibly. The School Board Association recommendation states the NHSBA supports legislation to restrict possession of firearms on school property to authorize enforcement personnel only. I would add supports legislation giving each school district the discretion to restrict, or the option. That would be my amendment to this.
That's number 11.
That's number 10.
Yeah, but number 11 is, supports legislation that makes clear the authority of the local school districts to restrict firearms and property. I'd amend that you could say, or not.
Well, let's not, we'll stay
So
with
they
number 10.
Yeah.
I'm on 10 right
We'll
now.
stay with 10.
I would not support 11, but with 10, if they gave the school district the discretion or the option.
I'd oppose it as written, but I'd agree with your statement that is a
Yeah, I
local.
think if we have the option,
decision.
fine, because,
That's how we felt last year, if I remember correctly.
you know, there are any number of school districts in the country now, and I'm gonna use for an example. I'm military trained and police trained. Dave Taylor was a veteran. Let's put it this, we had a number of veterans who have been trained in firearms. So if the school then said, you know, gee, we're a little anxious, there are schools in the country that have them secured and trained teachers in case of emergency. That would restrict us.
Correct.
Right.
We may want that option. We may not want the option. We may say we'll get just the administrators to be trained firearms people and have them do it, but we will lose that option.
Yep.
You know, so tailor it to what we want.
So as written, how many people would support this?
As written?
As written.
No.
And how many would oppose?
Oppose.
And the last one is number 11, Keene School Board restricts firearms from school property excepting authorized police and security personnel. The School Board Association does not recommend this one and believes that each school board should determine for itself whether or not to restrict.
Yep.
So I agree with the school board and would say I would vote no for this one. Anyone in favor of this? Are you opposed?
No, opposed.
No.
All right.
But again, if they make an amendment leaving it up to the school board to do it, you might change that
Well, I'll
vote.
bring my amended language with
I
me.
think Pam should go for the amendment. That's what we should vote for her to do, is to get on the floor and
Well, somebody else makes it.
go for it.
That's why I don't wanna
Well,
restrict
if
her.
people get a little sleepy, I'll step up to the mic, but.
That'll wake 'em up.
We should give her a charter, take no prisoners.
They'll either wake them up or they'll start snoring.
The continuing resolutions
Oh,
seem fairly innocuous. There are 5 of them. Yeah, they're at the top
We've
of
all
the
read them. Does
document.
anybody have any comments on them?
Any comments on those?
Of course.
Okay.
Which ones?
On number 3, I just said, I agree, so long as such legislation does not prevent armed support on premises. And on number 4, I said, I think we should be moving to a defined contribution plan rather than a defined benefit.
Oh, right, I agree with you on 4. School Board Association supports the continuing existence of the New Hampshire Retirement System, NHRS. I am opposed to defined benefit rather than defined contribution pensions myself, because many districts and many municipalities are one medical breakthrough away from bankruptcy, especially in California, so we need to reform the system, I think, but that's number 4 on the list. What is this, any more comments on number 4? Retirement system? Could go either way.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the high school class when like the teacher talked too much and then I just zoned out.
Right.
That's that moment.
Yep. Okay, let's go to 6.
You know that moment,
Oh,
don't you?
of course I do.
It's usually around
You've never been in
45
my
minutes.
class.
That's right. Peter would never have that happen.
You're losing it.
Oops.
No, I had this
okay.
big piece of metal I would drop and make everybody.
So they took money out a few years back and spent it on other things. And now they wanna put the money back, which means another tax
Increase.
increase for money that was already in there. Is that basically what that boils down to?
They're doing just like the Congress does. They raided all the social security money and did all their pork funding, and then they just charge us more for social security. That's all. Gave us those
I think it's tricky because people who are already using the retirement system need to be granted the promise we made with them.
But they are, they already are. It's, and
So,
and
I
if
mean,
they're short,
continued
we're on
payments
the
to
whole-
those
we're
that are
on the
grandfathered
line
in is
for it.
fine, but it should be reformed, that's my, so it's really tricky, what are you really voting on when you vote no or yes?
They're already guaranteed that if they're short in their earnings, the taxpayers are on the hook for the shortage.
Right,
Until such point as the whole system craps out and they can't be paid and then they lose it if you don't change it to
If it
the.
craps out, we end up with a state tax like Maine
Right.
and Massachusetts.
Okay, can we move on here?
any other comments on the continuing? I had one more for number 2, has to do with electioneering, and that a public body may affirmatively promote positions established by formal actions of that body. I would have added, without fiscal impact. In other words, not using tax dollars, we should not use district resources to promote, unless it's a newsletter or something like that.
Well, that was the problem, wasn't it?
Right, exactly.
That was the problem here, went out in the newsletter, so.
Well, yeah, but that wasn't the school board.
No, I
supporting a-
understand that, but
Right,
what I'm
that's
saying
the
is,
difference. You can't have a
Yeah.
principal do that, but the school board can't. I can actually talk about district things and it's not electioneering. I learned a lot last year.
And this year.
it's called baptism under fire.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So I guess I will support these, but mention the pension should indicate something about reforming the system, maybe as an amendment, which may or may not be supported.
Correct.
They won't get
I think that's all I have.
Enough.
Okay, moving on.
Not up there.
Thank you.
Are we still
you,
discussing
Pam.
public relations discussion?
Yes. We are.
Okay. So who wants to bring that
So as
subject
I
up?
mentioned in my report earlier, we had some like conflicts, or we had some difficulty last year when we were, the Public Relations Committee wanted to produce articles in support of the various warrant articles that the board had placed on the warrant. And we really felt at the time that we were not authorized to speak for the board, that we needed that specifically. And it made it very difficult, kind of going back and forth, editing the articles, and, there are time constraints when you have to get articles to the newspaper for print, and there's a fairly short amount of time during the election period. So we thought that and Ellie, you should jump in because you
Right,
kind of
well,
were
I
asking for
was
this, so.
waiting for you to finish and then I would.
Okay, so we felt that we wanted to bring this to the board for some guidance, and I'll let Ellie also.
When we go through the warrant articles, if you want the Public Relations Committee to send out press releases, not just to the Cowtown, but to the Seacoast Online, whatever. We need to act quickly. I personally was frustrated last year because I had to do a couple of press releases, had to come back to the board, you guys had to read it, had to approve it, back out. By that point, you're 3-4 weeks down the road because of deadlines and so forth. If you want us to take a position on behalf of the board, we'd like that so stated. If you go through the warrant articles and say, we'd like to see, we can do it individually, that's not a big deal. Any one of us could write any letters we want to individually on support of the warrant articles, or not, as the case may be. But if you wanted to come from the Public Relations Committee, I'm asking for some support from my colleagues that if we take a position in support of X, do you trust us to send out a press release in support of X with the intent that the board wants? We do a great job as a district in social media, in Facebook, and online, and constant contact, all that stuff, but we miss a whole segment. We do great communicating with our parents, but not as good on non-parents in the district. And so we wanted to address that by using the local publications, because that is widely read. My own prejudice notwithstanding, but I would still send it even to the Union Leader or the Eagle Tribune and the Seacoast newspaper, Seacoast Online, actually. So,
Can I just see if
sure,
I got this
and
right?
if you don't want to do that, that's okay.
No, I just want to see if I got this right. You want authorization to write an article on behalf of the school board prior to us seeing it? Because you don't have time for all of us to see it and talk.
Based on positions the board has already voted
I
on.
mean, no,
That's correct.
because I have something else to say after that, once I have
Not
that.
contrary
right in
to
my
any
mind.
position, in support of the board's position.
Okay, that's where I'm going to. I think when it comes to petition warrant articles, board stays away from them
I totally
as the
agree.
board.
That's okay.
But if it's a warrant article that the board is putting in, therefore supporting, yeah, go for it without going to us, because you already know that the board is for it.
This gets cumbersome. I'm not saying not to share. If I wrote one, I'd share it with Tammy and Tom.
Right.
Make sure I didn't miss something or.
But you already know the board is supporting them
Correct.
because we've already had discussions here and we voted on supporting that warrant. But whereas a petition, I might agree, I might not agree.
No, petitions are different.
Right,
And that's not. I'm not looking at.
Yeah.
I'm looking at board-supported warrant articles. If you want us to, if you don't want us to, that's okay too.
We already have the answer before you even start writing it, because you know we support it.
I get that, but it's
Well, that's why I'm saying I have
cumbersome.
no problem with you doing it.
I don't have a problem doing it as long as there's a way to, before it actually gets published, for each of us to read what you're gonna put out, and we have feedback to it either through you, or through you and Tom, or through you and Pete. Not to discuss it in emails, but if there's something in there that I think needs to be said differently, or doesn't represent my personal opinion, I'm gonna wanna be able to tell you that before it goes out.
Okay, then I'd rather not write the articles. It's
Then
nothing
yeah,
personal.
because that defeats
No,
the
it's
whole
not,
purpose.
no,
It's
it's
not,
not.
no,
Right.
I'd rather, will write any articles I want for me, and express my opinion. I won't express any board opinions. I won't represent the board, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that at all. That's why I wanted to bring it up, and make sure that there is no conflict. I don't wanna create a problem. And so, better that we have
It
none.
kinda reminds me of the policy where we were being asked to, if the board votes a majority of something, that all of us have to support that policy, regardless of our individual opinion about it. And I'm not saying that would happen.
But
Let's
it would
leave
if
it
it's a
unsaid.
split. I mean, I, even if I disagree with it, if the board has voted 6-1 and I'm the holdout, and the PR committee is going to write an article in support of what the board said, well, then clearly they're not gonna be writing it in support of what I said, because
Well, we probably.
they're not
somehow-
representing
the
me,
board-
they're representing the
The board has
board.
voted to
But what I
support.
hear Jim say is that, you'd have to include in there as well to be really fair, any dissenting opinions, even if it was 6-1.
But you could say, on such and such a day, the board has voted to support warrant article boo, which is, or we should stay out of it. I think the Public Relations Committee is looking for direction here. That's all they're
That's
asking.
fine, and I think we've got the direction. I think if we, individually, if we wanna send some articles in, that's what we'll do.
Right, yeah.
And leave it at that.
So probably
And-
to stay
And
away.
leave the social media the way it is, because that's been very effective.
Even a warrant article will tell you how many voted for it, how many voted against it. If it's unanimous, it doesn't matter.
Correct.
Right,
it's
but she
okay.
would be reporting on what the board voted.
I
It's-
know.
it's, You know,
Yeah.
so it's not like you don't wanna get into the
It's-
weeds.
And I have to be, it's hard for me
Yeah.
personally,
Yeah,
to write a
okay.
letter and then have to get it approved and all that.
Oh,
Right.
I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah,
I mean-
You know, it's just,
I would have no issue with it.
You're not being paid for
I
that.
think Ellie's crafted some really wonderful articles for the Carystown News last year. Really appreciated what you did for the board. I think the long-term concern is, do we want to give the PR committee the authority to continue writing these things over in the future? Because we may want to emphasize the tax impact, even though we've all voted yes unanimously. Some of the board members want to have that in the op-ed so that there's full transparency.
right.
Whereas the person writing it might say, yeah, I don't need that. So that's the concern, I think.
and I appreciate that, and that's why I think we should just leave it as is. And then if any individual wants to express his or her opinion, then they do so and call it a day.
I mean, if you think about it, you would have to give us, let's assume you had something now, you would have to give us something tonight that we wouldn't even be able to comment until the 8th,
Right.
and then any changes you would put in, and then we'd have to vote on the next time.
That's my
It's a
point.
month out, 2 months out.
Technically, the deadline is tomorrow at
Yeah.
noon for next week's paper.
Right.
Well, that's why it's being brought up.
Yeah, oh, no, I agree. I'm in support of what you're saying. Probably just want to stay away
I
from it.
got it. It's all right. I'll have plenty to write about. Get the seminary,
Now we
get
go to
lots to talk
non-public.
about.
Okay, so,
Thank you very much for letting us voice our concerns.
we're going to go to non-public, but then we're going to come out of non-public and talk about it. So I just want to explain to the people, all two of them, I can tell her about it when I get home. So Mary may stay. We're going to go into non-public and discuss warrant articles. After we talk about the warrant articles in
No,
non-public.
no, we're not gonna talk about warrant articles in non-public. We have
Three
other
issues.
things to discuss that
We've
may
got warrant
affect
articles
the
next.
warrant articles, but the warrant articles are after the non-public, just to be clear. We're not
Okay,
discussing the
I'm
warrant
confused.
articles in
Right,
non-public.
we're confusing again, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, we are not, I just wanna be clear for the public, we are not discussing
Do
the
we
warrant
want to talk
articles.
about warrant articles now?
Warrant articles?
No, because some of
We
it's
have to
gonna
go
be-
to non-public.
Yeah, I agree, I'm, okay.
Yep, no, just helping you out here. Yep.
There shouldn't be that many.
Yeah, okay. No, I'm just trying to speed up things and
Yeah.
in my haste, I'm making mistakes. Okay, so we're gonna go non-public.
We have to go into non-public to discuss some things, and then we are going to come out of non-public, and the decisions in non-public may affect the warrant article item on the agenda.
So they may not be spoken about.
They may or may not, it depends on what happens in non-public.
I'm here to hear about the warrant articles.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I'm here.
I'm sorry.
Are you gonna be talking about all the proposed warrant articles in your non-public?
No, we're not talking about the warrant articles in non-public. We're talking about other things that may affect potential warrant articles.
But, so, I think the question really was, is there any warrant articles that would not be impacted by the non-public that we could do first before we go to non-public so
sure.
you could leave? I think that's
Just
what
the
we're
general,
getting at.
the normal ones, like the budget warrant article, which is a standard language,
The default.
the default budget. Those are the only two that may not be affected. Most everything else would be. So it's, let me see. General acceptance of reports, operating budget, can't do that one. Can't do that one. That one. No. Only, the budget that you already know is the only one that wouldn't be impacted. Sorry.
Do you have an idea of how long you'll be in non-public?
Well, I thought we were gonna be 10 or 15 minutes for the first one, and we probably could have gone an hour, so I'm gonna say it's gonna be probably literally 45 minutes. I'm just being fair and transparent, because we've got 3 major items to discuss, and I don't wanna rush the board, I just wanna be transparent that this may take a little while.
Aaron, you should go home.
I'd take
I'm
the
fine.
over.
I'm
Yeah,
good.
you don't have to stay, really. It's gonna be a while.
Sure?
Yeah, yeah,
feel
it's
bad.
fine. Don't feel
No,
bad.
no,
You're fine.
that's
You've got
fine.
other things to do.
Take chocolates on your way out, then you won't.
Oh,
feel
I
bad.
definitely will. Don't have to ask me twice.
I'll try to move them along, Mary, I promise.
Do you have something to say, Larry?
Tammy would
Yes,
like a
I would
break.
like to go into RSA,
Couple minutes to go look
into
at it.
non-public session, into RSA
Or
91,
I'm just gonna be
dash
go
A,
on my own.
:3, Roman numeral 2. That's it.
That's it.
I need a
Second.
second.
Are we turning the mics off?
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
That's a roll call vote. Whoa, point of order. That has to be a roll
I
call.
just said unanimous.
No, you
Yes?
you have to call a roll call.
Oh, I have to actually say your name?
Yes.
Oh, man, Mr.
If you
Heath,
don't, you can end up in court.
Mr. Heath,
Yes.
Mr. Fitzpatrick,
Yes.
Yeah.
Killers.
Ellie,
Thanks, buddy. Is
Yes.
this your wife or this is you?
I was at Hershey and
Yes.
Times Square.
Tim Mahoney,
They're
yeah,
on sale.
I said yes, and that was by voice vote by yes.
All right, let's go through these warrants. We can start with
Wait a
number
minute.
one.
You want me to do this yet?
Yes, Larry, please do that.
All right. Put my glass. Mr. Chairman, I move that the Sanborn Regional School Board,
Say Madam Chairman?
not yet,
Not yet.
ratify the December 9th, 2019 tentative agreement reached with the Teamsters Local 633, and that the cost items contained therein be submitted to the district voters for approval in accordance with RSA 273-A:3, Roman numeral 2B.
Second.
Waiting for a second. Second. Discussion? All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 1, 2. Motion carries. Okay. Warrant article?
All right, here we go.
Now you wanna?
Let's start with number one. The first article is to elect the school district officers. Any modifications or changes or
Do you need
debate?
a vote on
I
that?
think you should vote on each one separately.
I move the adoption of Article 1
Second.
As written.
as printed.
As printed. Get that all right? Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Number
Oh,
2.
hold on a second. Matt, just say it out loud to
We
everybody.
might need to read this out loud because this may be subject to 90.
That's what I thought too.
Oh, okay, all right, I'll read it out loud, just so that it's subject to 91A and it's public on the camera. Like, I'll read the warrant article and then you can, thank you, Matt. Do I need to read this whole thing at the top, or do I just need to read Article 1?
Article
All right.
1 as written.
To elect the following school district officers: school board, 1 member from Kingston for 3 years, 1 member from Newton for 3 years, 1 member at large from Kingston and Newton for 3 years. Moderator, 1 elected for 1 year. Budget committee, 1 member from Newton for 3 years.
Wait. That's Article 2.
No, it's not. It's an Article
Oh,
1.
there it is up
Yes.
there. Okay, you got
Okay.
it. You got it.
Jeez.
Peter,
Budget committee, 1 member from Newton for 3 years, 1 member from Kingston for 3 years, and 1 member from Kingston for 1 year.
How about a motion, Larry?
So moved,
As printed.
as printed.
Second? Okay. Discussion? All in favor? Oh, is that a discussion you have?
No.
Okay. Okay, there's unanimous.
All right, Article 2, general acceptance of reports. Shall the reports of the school district agents, auditors, committees, or officers chosen be accepted and placed on file?
so moved as printed.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Operating budget, shall the Sanborn Regional School District raise and appropriate as an operating budget, not including appropriations by special warrant articles and other appropriations voted separately, the amount set forth on the budget proposed with the warrant, or as amended by vote at the first session for the purposes set forth therein, totaling the amount that we adopted. Dollars, should the article be defeated, the default budget shall be the adopted default budget. The same as last year, with certain adjustments required by the previous action of the Sanborn Regional School District or by law or the governing body. may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 40, 13, 10, and 16 to take up the issue of a revised operating budget only. This warrant article does not include appropriations in any other warrant article.
Motion?
We don't
Oh,
have
yes.
the amounts,
Do you want the amounts in there?
yes.
Matt, can you just,
Okay, the default budget that was approved was $36,663,425.
And the regular budget was,
The operating budget that was approved was $36,416,372.
okay. So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
okay, thank you. Article 4, Administrators Collective Bargaining Agreement. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District approve the cost items included in the collective bargaining agreement for administrators reached between the school board and the Teamsters Local 633, which calls for the following increases in salaries and benefits at current staffing levels over the amount paid for in the prior fiscal year for year 2020 to 2021, $14,355.59. And further, to raise and appropriate the sum of $14,355.59 for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, such sum representing the additional costs attributable to the increase in salaries and benefits required by the new agreement over those of the appropriation at the current staffing levels.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Article 5, oh,
Wait, hold on.
I'm sorry.
You get the, okay. Okay, you got the pause? Opposed?
Okay, thank you. Special meeting administratives collective bargaining agreement. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District, if Article 4 is defeated, authorize the governing body to call one special meeting at its option to address Article 4 cost items only?
So moved,
As
Second.
written.
as written.
That was Tammy moved and
Okay.
Larry seconded.
Can I have clarification?
Sure.
Since this is a first-time contract, does that mean all the language is moot?
I think that they only vote on the cost items. So the language is not moot.
So the language is moot, that it doesn't go into effect.
They stay status quo until an agreement is reached on the cost items.
You're not listening to me.
I am, I just
Saying
didn't
the
understand.
contract, the written contract, you have a 12-page contract.
Yep.
First time.
Yep.
If Article 4 doesn't pass, we get to have a special meeting on just the cost items in Article 5. That means there's no language.
No, the language stays in place, just like it would if the teacher's contract failed.
If you approve the dollar amount, you're approving the language.
Oh, I see. All right, okay.
It's the dollar
All
amount.
right. Gotcha.
Thanks.
You get the motion and the second on that?
Yes.
Just further discussion? All in favor? Got that, you got Larry on that too? Okay,
The opposed is better.
5.
Opposed, Jamie and Jim.
You're opposed?
Yeah, I think it's a waste of time. If the voters
No,
voted
no,
down.
that's fine.
It's fine. Yeah, just double checking.
Yeah.
All right. Sale of seminary property. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District sell a certain parcel of land with the buildings thereon, which include the seminary, old high school, gym, 2 outbuildings, and parking areas located at 178 Main Street in Kingston, and designated as tax map R34, Lot 17, for $200,000, payable over a term of years, and authorize the school board to enter into long-term lease agreements with the buyer for the gym and 2 outbuildings on the terms and conditions determined by the school board, and further authorize the school board to take any and all necessary action to carry out this vote, including the acquisition and/or conveyance of any necessary easements. So I believe that the board may have suggestions for this one.
Well, I was thinking one of two things. Put that in. Then after you talk to the people we talked about in the non-public, amend it, or it can be amended on the floor if we have to go that far, depending on when you get the answers. So we've got 2 or 3 options here. Take it as it is, put in the changes we talked about, or wait until the floor to deliberative, whatever you want.
I move the article as printed with the stipulation that it may need to be editorially tweaked
Yes.
by the attorneys afterwards, but based on what our discussion was. But I would move that we adopt the article as presented, but knowing that it could be editorially tweaked to more accurately reflect the lease back of the other buildings.
Second.
Further discussion? Yep.
Yeah, just for clarification purposes, and I don't know if this is what you're saying, but I believe that we should be identifying the dollar amount of the leasebacks in the warrant.
I totally agree with
That's
you.
what we'll
That-
probably
that's-
do. But worst case scenario, we have until the deliberative where we can make that amendment, a motion on the floor.
But I don't think we should wait for the
Oh,
deliberative.
no,
to
I'm
make-
saying worst
We
case
can do it
scenario.
anytime.
We need to have a little clarification on that. We could do that amend this at the next meeting.
Absolutely.
Okay, I do not want to wait till the
I
deliberative session.
agree with you. I'm just saying, God
We're not
forbid.
gonna do
Is there any
that.
reason why we just couldn't do it tonight?
We could say, enter into a long-term lease agreements with the buyer for $1 for the gym and 2 outbuildings. And then ask legal if that's okay later, and if it's not okay, we can adjust it at the next meeting.
We've
For
got
$1
two things. The
$1
dollar
annually.
and
Per
the
year.
wording,
Per
Yeah.
year.
because Jim brought up. So why don't we go with this, and then once we get that clarified, we'll make the adjustments.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, it's gonna be
Yeah,
there.
that's okay.
I just wanted to get out for anybody watching, that the
Right.
lease back is a situation that
It's $1 per
is
year.
$1 per year.
I do believe that Mr. Baker would like to make a language suggestion, and I would like to know if the board's will was to change that language or to leave it the way it is. So there's one issue, which was the dollar.
Yeah.
For the gym and for the 2 outbuildings per year, for I think 5 years each. And then we'll find that out, so that's the first directive of the
Yep.
board. The second directive of the board was or conversation is, are you gonna authorize the school board to enter into long-term lease agreements with the buyer? Are we gonna move the word "with the buyer" after the word "2 outbuildings"?
That's the editorial comment I was referring to.
Okay.
And there's two things I would like to say about that. Number one, you would certainly pass the attorney again.
Yes, sir.
And then we have to send them to DRA, may have input. So I would stay as it is now until we get further direction. That's my suggestion.
Okay.
I think the dollar amount needs to go in before DRA.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely, then, yes. What I'm
We'll
saying
have
is,
this-
I'm only talking about the grammatical now.
We'll have this ready for you for the 8th,
Okay.
with feedback from attorneys, and then we'll send it to the DRA.
Okay.
If there's a timeline issue, we will let you know
We'll
sooner.
do it electronically and then we can
That's right.
attach the minutes.
That's right, we'll get it done tomorrow.
Okay, so, further discussion. All in favor?
All right,
Thank you. All right, Article 7, lease of the Sanborn Regional Middle School. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District authorize the school board to enter into a long-term lease for the Sanborn Regional Middle School located at 31 West Main Street, Newton, New Hampshire, and designated as parcel ID 060704 and parcel ID 060605, and further authorize the school board to negotiate the terms and conditions of the lease and take any other action necessary to carry out this vote.
Motion,
So moved.
second.
discussion? All in favor?
aye,
Article 8, Enrichment Revolving Fund. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District establish an enrichment revolving fund in accordance with RSA 194-3C to be funded by receipts from enrichment activities for the purpose of supporting enrichment programs with amounts to be withdrawn from the revolving fund and dispersed monthly as needed? I would like Mr. Angel to explain this because he drafted this for your consideration.
Okay, the enrichment revolving fund would be to receive revenues, it's like a tuition-based program. And so if a student wants to attend, like, say, a robotics class over the summer, they can pay a fee to attend the class. That fee should cover the cost of the robotics program and cover the cost of the teacher who's teaching it. So there should be no impact to the taxpayers.
Now, am I correct that you have to establish the fund and the money prior to, or we cannot spend, even though there's going to be revenue brought in? Because a lot of people think it's like a company where, oh, you sold a bicycle, you got money, you can buy another bicycle. Now, you gotta have the appropriations, so that's what you're
Okay, well,
doing
the
here.
thing is right now enrichment is falling underneath the general fund appropriations.
Right.
By making a revolving fund, however, we're taking it out of the budget cycle. So this would be like a continued appropriation authorization, so they can spend in the revolving fund for this program until it's rescinded at some point in the future.
But the people who use it will be funding it also. It's not just
It's
strictly budget money.
It's not budget money.
Okay. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with people, so, you
Yeah.
know, and we know the rules, but they don't necessarily.
So how does it work? Somebody needs $1,000. They have to come up with a source for $1,000 to repay. Did the money get spent and then they repay it, or do they raise the money and then it gets spent?
So what would happen is say, for example, we have an idea for a program, and say the teacher came up with an idea for a program. We would come up with a per pupil cost for that particular program, go out and see if we can get a minimum number of students to sign up for it to cover the cost of the program. If we do not get the minimum number to fund it, then we would have to make a decision as to whether the revolving fund is going to be internally funding. You know, you're going to have winners and losers, okay? But for most part, if we don't get enough participation to generate revenue to pay for costs, it shouldn't move forward, okay?
Where does the first money come from? Establish the fund, that's not a problem. But where's the money gonna come from?
There's
It's gonna
no
be $1 or something?
I mean, you can make it $1, but the point is that there's no outlay of funds until there's an inflow of funds.
Who decides the programs that get to go ahead and don't go ahead?
This would be through the building principal, the high school principal. He's got a whole bunch of programs right now that are moving along, and this gives us flexibility to expand the programs. What I'd like to try to do is somehow get these programs so that we're integrating it with the rec department. So the students can go to the rec department in the morning, come to the school in the afternoon and do robotics, and then go home. So it's more or less trying to extend the day for the students
In the summer.
in the summer.
So we have summer enrichment
The
programs.
principle sounds good. My concern is the cost controls applied to it. Sometimes you get bright, shiny objects of ideas, and everybody jumps on the bandwagon, but then it comes up short, and the school board's asked to make up the difference.
Well, that's the point. So I asked Matt a lot about this because
Yeah.
I didn't understand it at first, because he came to the district and saw that we were having to budget for our summer programs and anticipate revenues. He's trying to create it where the revenues fund the programs, and if the revenues aren't there, i.e. people don't sign up, they don't run. Right? And
There's also ancillary costs with a lot of these things, though. So it depends on who's figuring out what the cost is. We've had presentations to us, we were told a certain number, and it doesn't always turn out to be the number of what it actually costs.
And that's where the revolving fund protects us, because if it's not there, you can't run it. The
Well-
revolving fund, so what happens is you'll have one program that's proposed to say, I'm just gonna use some general numbers for easy math. If you have 20 students in a summer theater program, that's your budget. If 20 students sign up at $100 apiece, you have enough to pay the staff and the materials to run the program. So one year, the program runs and it's 35 students that sign up. The excess money then goes in that revolving fund and is housed there. So that later on, 2 summers later, let's say, that same 20 students, they only have 17. They can access the revolving fund to still run the program. It has to be self-sustaining or it doesn't run.
My question is, who decides that it's gonna cost $100, or does it really cost $115?
Well, the point is that if the costs that are anticipated to
Right.
run the program aren't accurate, then it can't run. So it has to,
We had
we're
a-
already doing it, we're just trying to house it properly.
Okay,
So that, the problem is that we already have a tremendous amount of summer programs
yeah,
that run, but what's happening right now is that we're budgeting for those programs annually, and then hoping that the revenue comes in, or not running them if the revenue doesn't come in. This way, it becomes self-sustaining, and you can carry the funds from year to year to maintain the system working forward. And we're hoping to expand it. So, Matt, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the gist is basically to put the money where it belongs.
And I understand that.
Okay.
I'm just thinking of proposals that we've had where we were told that something's gonna cost X number of dollars.
Yes.
And then we dig into the details, and the actual cost is substantially different. So what kind of controls are there gonna be on that sort of?
Okay, so normally when you operate a program like this, you're gonna have like a budget worksheet where you're gonna have a description of the program that's gonna be offered, what kind of costs are gonna be associated with it, and then to come up with a per student cost. And so we can figure out what the minimum number of students are gonna be in there, and then that budget sheet is gonna be signed off, or should be signed off by the building principal.
So if that budget sheet is complete, if it has everything in there that is gonna be a cost, then that works great. But if there's things that are left out of that budget sheet, that's gonna be a cost that's not anticipated for the budget. So the $100 instead of $100 is $115. That's where my concern is. Like with proposals for new programs, they go through you look at the costs, or they go through somebody else, or they come here, we look at the costs, we ask questions, and we find out, or have they really looked at all the costs?
I think what they're saying is that you do this now anyways, it's just messier.
It's just really messy right
Okay.
now.
So yeah, that's my understanding, it's just what Ellie said is, right now, if there's a cost overrun, we eat it and it's not clear that there was a cost overrun. In the future, they'll be clear there's a cost overrun because the bank will be empty. And you can't keep the program going because the bank's empty. So something's gotta change in the revenue side or it doesn't continue.
So we put,
Exactly.
so when the revenue comes in, it goes into the bank, and if there's not enough money going in, there ain't gonna run the program.
So there's a ceiling on how much can go.
We're having one problem here. People are talking without being recognized.
Oh, sorry.
Tammy, quite correctly, asked me to recognize her. I said I would, and then 3 people started talking without being recognized.
Fair enough, my apologies.
Tam, no, that's okay.
Sorry.
Tammy,
That's okay. I mean, thank you
She's
very
getting
much.
used to it.
You, but I actually have, my comments are regarding the wording of this, actually, not even so much of, so you can finish.
No, I'm
Are you
good.
guys done? So if the way this is worded, when you use the word enrichment in the general sense, and you're not specific to that this is for high school, which I am assuming, or for summer, the elementary schools, the middle school, all the schools have enrichment programs that they run. So if I, as a voter, was reading this, I would be like, oh, cool, enrichment, I'm all for, and I am all for enrichment programs. I think you need to be more specific if this is if this is targeted for summer enrichment, and I'm assuming you're talking at the high school.
The programs are housed at the high school, but they're district-wide.
Okay.
So it's all 12 grades.
I think you need to be a little more specific with this warrant article, because to me, I'm thinking that we're gonna be supporting enrichment, that this is a fund for the enrichment programs that run, like the one that they spoke about earlier that Mrs. Klamarczyk runs. She's the enrichment teacher at the
good
baby
point.
school.
Okay.
To me, that's how I read this when I first read it,
So it would be, can I just wordsmith a little bit
Sure.
right
I
now,
think
and
you
then
should.
we'll work on it and bring it back on the 8th if we need to, but would it make sense if it said, summer and after-school programs?
Yes.
more
Yes.
sense.
Because that's
Yes.
really what it is, and
Yeah.
it may get to the point where we start to house enrichment programs for athletics too. Because we have summer enrichment programs for athletics that aren't necessarily our teams. So we view this as the starting point is for the quote academic enrichment, but we're gonna need to talk about the way that the funds are being managed for all of these athletic
Yep.
little get-togethers and things, like a soccer clinic.
Yep, sure.
If there's a 3-day soccer clinic, that money should go here, right? So it's bigger, so let's bring this one back to you.
The word enrichment, I think you need to be really careful.
Okay with that? All right, we'll bring this back to you and we'll try to clarify that component with more specifics.
Okay.
Very good point,
Thank you, Tammy, that was a really good point. So we'll move on to number 9. Article 9, the Capital Reserve Fund Unanticipated
wait a minute, do you need to vote on this?
We're gonna bring back number 8. Yep. We'll bring that back on the 8th, thank you. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise, I'm sorry, Matt, I don't have the amounts here. Did you, was this one, the one that was 25,000 last year? Yeah, because the next one is the one that was 75, right? Thank you. So shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate?
No, vice versa.
Was it vice versa, Pam?
Capital's 25
Thank you.
and, which is 10. And
Yep.
educational 75.
Thank you very much. Will Capital Reserve Fund unanticipated educational, yes. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate $75,000 to be placed in the Capital Reserve Fund unanticipated educational expenses established at the 2019 meeting?
So moved. As written.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Right, not yet. All opposed? Ellie, I didn't see you raise your hand.
I
either
did,
one.
I'm sorry, I
Okay,
did.
she said it. You were looking at me, but I could have sworn you just, anyway. Okay.
Thank you. Number 10, Capital Reserve Fund, Capital Improvement and Maintenance. Shall the Sanborn Regional School District vote to raise and appropriate a sum up to $25,000 to be added to the Capital Improvement and Maintenance Capital Reserve Fund previously established. This sum to come from the June 30th fund balance available for transfer on July 1st instead of returning the money to the community. No amount to be raised from taxation.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of points. One is, just so that people are aware, when we say no amount is raised from taxation, that's true. We're not increasing taxes, but it otherwise would have gone back, so there was a potential to decrease taxes. So why would one support that? Because it is a prudent financial thing to do, to build reserves, to deal with issues that may come that are not foreseeable. And as it is a prudent and reasonable thing to do, that's why I'm supporting it.
Thank you, Jamie. And I would also like to elaborate for the public on the TV before we wrap this evening up that if you think back to your budget analysis and the questions that you asked about things that we could reduce and changes we could make, the better our reserves are, the more comfortable we feel about tightening up closer to the actual expenditures.
Fair enough.
We're trying to grow this over time so that we can really tighten that up and equalize the blood sugar of the taxation. Keep it steady, okay? So that's the real goal here. We're just trying to do it in reasonable steps over time.
Article 10, the last sentence is the sum to come from June 30 fund balance available. How is that different from Article 9? Because it's not included in Article 9.
You know, that actually, I'm really glad that you brought that up because last year, Article 9 was created. So we probably should have the same sentence in Article 9, Jim, because that's really where it would come from.
Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't want to raise, last year we did raise taxes for that. But this year we don't have to. We could do it from because it was a new article last year. So if you would like to do that from the fund balance, then we should just use the same sentence. The sum to come from the July 30 fund balance available for transfer on July 1st, instead of returning money to the community, no amount to be raised from taxation. Would anyone like to make a motion to add that to Article 9?
So moved.
Second.
Go with Larry. Throw the hat to us.
There we go. Pick one.
Good job.
Phyllis, pick one.
Put Jamie in this one.
Jamie and Larry.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Thank you. Do we have a motion on Article 10?
Oh, okay, yep.
I just didn't get it.
Okay, you're right, okay. That motion to add that sentence was for Article 9.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and we did have a motion on it. Okay, now we need the one for Article 10.
Motion for Article 10. Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Anybody?
So moved. As written.
Second.
Discussion?
I think we're getting tired.
All in favor? It's getting late, folks.
All right, so we will get back to you on Article 8 and clarify that language, and we will work on Article 6 and get that wrapped up for you ASAP, okay?
Okay, I believe that concludes our business.
Thank you for the
Oh,
sugar rush.
second public comment, anybody?
Even Marie left.
Okay.
Your wife left.
Even she left.
Go ahead.
Okay, next meeting agenda. You have that, the Article 8
Yep.
right?
Article
You did a good
8
job.
and,
We put a hurt on them.
Article 8 and 6 will be reviewed again at the next meeting.
Anybody else have something they want on the agenda as of now? I mean, we've got weeks. Okay, here we go. Announcements. The next Sanborn Regional School Board meeting will be held on Wednesday, January 8th, 2020, from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. in the library of Sanborn Regional High School, 17 Danville Road in Kingston, New Hampshire. The Budget Committee will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, January 14, 2020, at 7 p.m. in the auditorium at the Sanborn Regional High School. Snow date is Wednesday, January 15, 2020. The filing period for positions at the Sanborn Regional School Board, the Sanborn Regional Budget Committee, and the District Moderator will open on Wednesday, January 22nd, 2020, and end on Friday, January 31, 2020, at 5 p.m. The candidate filing forms may be obtained. The candidate filing forms may be obtained at the SAU office from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. located in the Christie Building, 51 Church Street, Kingston. The school district clerk will be available on the last day of filing until 5 p.m. The first deliberative session for the annual school district meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 5th, from 7 p.m. in the auditorium at the Sanborn Regional High School. Snow date is February 6th, 2018. The second, that's the voting.
Let's make that 2020.
I'm sorry. Hey, did we cut and paste? Okay. Debbie, yes, yeah, it'll be a year ago, February 18th. No, 2020. Okay, the second voting session at the annual school district meeting will be held Tuesday, March 10th, 2020, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in the Swayze Gym, Sanborn Seminary campus for Kingston voters and the Newton Town Hall for Newton voters. I don't believe we have any more non-publics. All right, do you want to vote or you want me to just adjourn it?
I want you to just adjourn it.
This meeting is adjourned.